My name is Ava, and I'm 28 years old. I stood there, a peculiar phantom in a room filled with judging eyes, the air thick with unspoken assumptions and thinly veiled pity. The mahogany library was opulent, suffocating almost, every polished surface reflecting the grim faces of my late uncle's relatives. They clustered in hushed groups, their whispers like tiny, sharp needles pricking at the silence that preceded the reading of the will. Each person, from my distant cousin Martha with her perpetually pursed lips to Uncle Robert with his booming, forced joviality, seemed to cast a shadow of judgment my way. A heavy scent of aged paper and something faintly metallic, perhaps old money, clung to the atmosphere. The lawyer, Mr. Davies, a man whose glasses seemed to magnify the gravity of the moment, cleared his throat, adjusting the stack of documents before him. I could feel their collective gaze, a tangible weight on my shoulders, as if my mere presence was an affront. They saw me as the charity case, the unexpected, unwelcome addition to this hallowed family gathering, the recipient of my uncle's kindness, which they perceived as foolish generosity. A wave of heat crept up my neck, but I forced my posture straight, my gaze fixed on a faded tapestry across the room, refusing to meet anyone's eyes. I understood their disdain. I was not one of them. I hadn't grown up in their gilded cages, nor did I carry their prestigious family name. My connection to the wealthy patriarch, my uncle Elias, was distant, unconventional, and to them, completely inexplicable. They had known him for decades, cultivated relationships, while I had only entered his life a mere 5 years ago, after my mother, his estranged sister, passed away. The low murmur of conversation ceased abruptly as Mr. Davies began to speak, his voice a dry rustle against the solemn quiet. He started with the usual formalities, the dates, the names, the legal jargon that always seemed to stretch time into an eternity. My attention drifted. Accustomed to being ignored in these family settings, my mind replaying the last conversation I'd had with Uncle Elias. He had been so frail, his voice a mere whisper, but his eyes, those kind, intelligent eyes, had held a warmth that belied his failing health. I traced the intricate pattern of the Persian rug beneath my worn boots, feeling utterly out of place amidst their designer shoes and tailored suits. Martha cleared her throat loudly, a not-so-subtle reminder of my perceived impropriety. I didn't flinch, my focus unwavering. They assumed I was there out of obligation, a final courtesy, perhaps hoping for a token sum, a small, forgettable gesture of Elias's renowned benevolence. That's what they believed, at least. That's why their pity was so palpable, so condescending. I could almost hear their internal monologue. Poor Ava, she's about to be disappointed. Mr. Davies continued, his voice a drone, listing bequests to charities and distant relatives I'd never even heard of. A significant sum was earmarked for the local botanical garden, a place Uncle Elias had loved, its vibrant colors a stark contrast to the muted tones of this room. Martha shifted impatiently beside her husband, a faint sigh escaping her perfectly painted lips, clearly eager for the main event, the allocation of the truly substantial assets. They all were. Their eyes, though feigning disinterest, flickered with an almost predatory anticipation. I watched a dust moth dance in a shaft of sunlight cutting through the heavy drapes, mesmerized by its seemingly carefree existence. My thoughts drifted to Uncle Elias's study, filled with books, the scent of pipe tobacco, and the quiet comfort of his presence. He had been a sanctuary for me, a rare understanding in a world that often felt harsh and unyielding. Ava, he'd once told me, his voice gentle. Sometimes the greatest strength lies in being underestimated. His words echoed in my mind, a subtle hum against the lawyer's monotone delivery. The familiar names started to trickle in. Robert, receiving the antique pocket watch collection. Martha, granted a portion of the extensive art collection she had always coveted. Each pronouncement was met with a discreet nod, a small, knowing smile, or a barely suppressed sigh of satisfaction from the recipients. It was exactly as they expected, a predictable distribution among the rightful heirs, the lineage clearly defined, the pecking order undisturbed. I remained a peripheral shadow, barely registering in their consciousness. A faint tremor ran through me, not of fear or disappointment, but of a strange, burgeoning awareness. I remembered the way Uncle Elias's eyes would twinkle when he had a secret, a mischievous glint that was rarely seen by others. He had been a private man, often underestimated himself by those who mistook his quiet nature for simple-mindedness. I knew better. I saw the depth of his intellect, the sharp wit that lay beneath his gentle demeanor. And now, Mr. Davies paused, adjusting his spectacles, his gaze sweeping over the expectant faces. To the primary residuary legatee. The air in the room seemed to thicken, every breath held. Martha leaned forward, a triumphant smirk playing on her lips, surely convinced her name would be next. Uncle Robert subtly cleared his throat, puffing out his chest. Even I felt a slight tightening in my stomach, though I wasn't sure why. Then Mr. Davies's voice, which had been so flat and impersonal, took on a distinct, almost hesitant clarity. He looked directly at me, a flicker of something unreadable in his eyes. The room, which moments ago had been a low hum of anticipation, fell into an absolute, breathless silence. The only sound was the faint tick of a grandfather clock in the hall, counting away the seconds to a revelation none of them saw coming. Mr. Davies's gaze, magnified behind his lenses, held mine, a connection I hadn't anticipated, and for a fleeting moment, I felt a jolt of something akin to recognition, as if he knew a secret about me that even I hadn't fully grasped. The silence was so profound it buzzed in my ears, punctuated only by the distant, rhythmic tick of the grandfather clock. My breath hitched, a strange mix of dread and inexplicable anticipation swirling within me. What could he possibly say that would warrant such a dramatic pause, such a direct stare? I was just Ava, the quiet observer, the one who didn't belong. A cough broke the stillness, a sharp, impatient sound from Martha. Her triumphant smirk had dissolved into a puzzled frown, her eyes darting between me and the lawyer. Uncle Robert, too, seemed to deflate slightly, his earlier swagger replaced by a wary stillness. Their collective gaze, once dismissive, now sharpened into a curious, almost suspicious focus on me. I could feel their questions hanging in the air, a palpable tension. "What is he doing?" their eyes screamed. "And why is he looking at her?" Then Mr. Davies took a deep, deliberate breath, his voice, when it came, cutting through the heavy air like a perfectly sharpened blade. "To my beloved niece, Ava," he began, his tone now imbued with a surprising warmth, completely unlike the dry formality he'd maintained for everyone else. The world tilted on its axis. My name, spoken with such emphasis, resonated through the stunned room, a foreign sound among the familiar echoes of their expected inheritances. A collective gasp rippled through the room, followed by an immediate explosion of hushed, incredulous whispers. "Ava? Did he just say, her name?" someone muttered, the disbelief so thick it was almost comedic. Martha's perfectly painted lips parted in an indignant, "Oh," her face blanching. "Impossible!" she hissed, barely audible but laden with fury. Robert cleared his throat again, this time a sound of genuine shock, not feigned nonchalance. "Are you certain, Mr. Davies?" Uncle Robert interjected, his voice uncharacteristically high-pitched, a desperate attempt to regain control of the narrative. "Perhaps there's been a clerical error? My brother Elias surely meant—" He trailed off, unable to complete the sentence, the implications too profound. The lawyer, however, simply met his gaze with unyielding calm. "The will is quite clear, Robert," Mr. Davies stated, his voice firm, leaving no room for doubt. "And unambiguous." My heart hammered against my ribs, a wild drum solo in the sudden cacophony of their disbelief. It felt as if every pair of eyes in the room had suddenly become a laser, dissecting me, trying to uncover the hidden mechanism behind this inexplicable pronouncement. The pity that had been so generously bestowed upon me moments before vanished, replaced by a potent cocktail of suspicion, outrage, and something akin to betrayal. I was no longer the charity case. I was the thief of their expectations. "This is preposterous!" Martha exclaimed, finally breaking free of her stunned silence. Her voice, usually carefully modulated, was shrill, laced with unbridled indignation. "Elias always said," he assured us, There must be a mistake. Who is this girl, really, to inherit anything of significance? Her eyes, usually so dismissive, were now burning with a fierce, unsettling intensity directed entirely at me, as if I had orchestrated this grand deception. I simply stood there, a peculiar phantom no longer, but a very solid, very present problem. He has bequeathed the entire residuary estate, including all properties, financial holdings, and remaining assets, to Ava, Mr. Davies continued, his voice unwavering, deliberately emphasizing each word, as if to make absolutely certain that every single relative understood the magnitude of what he was saying. The lawyer's words hung in the air, dense and heavy, suffocating the last vestiges of their composure. The room filled with the sound of choked gasps and furious, disbelieving exclamations. It was a cacophony of shattered assumptions. The indignation was a palpable force, a wave of hostility washing over me. Martha, face a mask of red-hot fury, took a step forward, finger trembling. "This is a travesty," she shrieked. "My brother would never, he wouldn't betray his own family for some stranger." Her eyes were wild, searching for a flaw. Uncle Robert looked poised to combust. "Silence, please," Mr. Davies commanded, voice firm, cutting through the din. He tapped papers. "This is a legal document, properly executed, no ambiguity. Mr. Elias Thorne unequivocally named Ava as the sole beneficiary." His repetition of my name felt surreal, yet validating. A peculiar calm, defiant, settled over me. I watched their faces twist, civility melting to reveal raw disbelief. "She's not even a Thorne by blood," a distant cousin whined. "What claim? What magic did she weave?" The accusation hung, thick with implied manipulation. Heat rose in my cheeks, not from guilt, but their audacity. "My relationship with Uncle Elias was private," I stated, voice steady. "He chose to include me, and I cherished that." Martha scoffed. "Cherished or calculated? What did you do?" "Ms. Thorne was a constant, compassionate presence in Mr. Thorne's final years," Mr. Davies intervened, tone softening. "He found great comfort. His affections were entirely his own." Robert wasn't appeased. "Comfort that cost us our inheritance? We are his family. We deserve an explanation." He slammed a fist. The room buzzed with agreement, a low growl. Their faces, contorted by greed, showed how little they truly cared for Elias. My gaze drifted to Elias's portrait, eyes twinkling. I understood his final, masterful stroke of defiance. He knew the chaos he would unleash, and chose me, the outsider, to bear witness. "You have no right to question his choices," I said, finding strength. "He made his wishes known. His will speaks for itself." Martha's eyes narrowed, a chilling smile touching her lips. "Oh, it speaks for itself, all right," she purred. "But we'll see if it stands up in court. This isn't over, Ava, not by a long shot." The threat hung in the air. I met her gaze, no longer intimidated. A strange calm settled. I had nothing to lose, nothing to gain from their approval. Uncle Elias had given me a gift beyond money, a validation that cut deeper than any material wealth. He had chosen me for who I was, and that itself was a fortune. The room whirled with accusations, but I felt anchored. Mr. Davies cleared his throat, a weary sound. "I believe that concludes the reading of the will," he stated. "My office will be in touch for next steps. Thank you." His dismissal felt absurdly out of place. The official part was over. The messy human drama, however, was just beginning. The silence that followed was thick with unspoken fury, a coiled spring ready to snap. Mr. Davies's abrupt dismissal did nothing to dissipate the storm brewing in the opulent room. Instead, it served as a signal, a release valve for the collective rage that had been simmering just beneath the surface. As he gathered his papers, a low, guttural murmur began, swelling into a furious crescendo. Martha, her face a mask of scarlet indignation, lunged forward, not towards the lawyer, but directly at me, her designer handbag swinging dangerously. You little schemer!" she spat, her voice raw, stripped of all its usual veneer of polite society. Her eyes, usually so calculating, were wide and wild, reflecting a venomous fury I'd never seen from her before. How dare you stand there so calm after what you've done? After you manipulated poor, sick Elias? Her words were a physical assault, designed to wound, to shatter the quiet defiance I'd managed to maintain. Uncle Robert, equally incensed, stepped in, placing a restraining hand on Martha's arm, though his own expression was just as dark. "Martha, calm yourself," he urged, but his gaze, when it met mine, was equally accusing. "Ava, this is completely out of line. My brother was not well. He was clearly taken advantage of. There is no other explanation for this. This travesty." His voice boomed, attempting to regain the authority he felt he was owed. "Taken advantage of?" I repeated, my voice surprisingly steady, a cool counterpoint to their heat. A sense of righteous indignation, foreign yet empowering, began to bubble within me. Uncle Elias was a brilliant man, Robert. He was sharp, clear-minded, right up until his last days. And he chose me. He chose me, not because I manipulated him, but because he saw something in me that he clearly didn't see in any of you. The words were out before I could censor them, a defiant challenge. Martha let out a strangled cry. "How dare you speak to us like that? We are his family, his blood. What are you? A distant niece he barely remembered, suddenly showing up for the inheritance." She gestured wildly around the room, encompassing the other relatives whose faces mirrored her disgust. Their collective glares felt like a physical weight, pressing in on me from all sides, a chorus of silent accusations. "His blood didn't visit him in the hospital," I countered, my voice low, but carrying an unexpected weight. "His blood didn't sit with him for hours, reading his favorite books, listening to his stories, holding his hand when he was too weak to lift it himself. His blood was too busy planning how to divide up his possessions before he was even cold." The words hung in the air, a stark, painful truth that silenced them, if only for a moment. Mr. Davies, who had been trying to discreetly usher himself out, paused, a faint, almost imperceptible nod of approval passing over his features as he watched the confrontation unfold. He cleared his throat then, stepping slightly forward. "I must reiterate, the will explicitly states Mr. Elias Thorne's wishes. Any insinuation of undue influence is unfounded and, quite frankly, defamatory." His intervention was a shield, momentarily deflecting their attack. Robert's face purpled. "Defamatory? You're defending her? After all we've done for Elias, for this family? We'll contest this, Mr. Davies. We will absolutely contest this in court. You can be sure of that." His threat was laced with genuine anger, a raw, wounded entitlement. The room buzzed with agreement, a cacophony of muttered vows to seek legal retribution. "You're welcome to try, Robert," I said, looking him squarely in the eye, my voice firm. A strange calm had settled over me, replacing the initial shock. "But you won't be contesting a document. You'll be contesting Elias's love, his trust, and his final clear decision. And I have no doubt the court will see the truth, just as he did." I felt a quiet strength bloom in my chest, a legacy Elias had given me long before this moment. Martha let out a frustrated gasp, seemingly at a loss for words, her face a mask of bitter disbelief. She spun on her heel, pulling Robert with her, muttering about contacting their own lawyers immediately. The other relatives, though still simmering with resentment, slowly began to disperse, their whispers following me like shadows. The air remained thick with their animosity, a bitter aftertaste to the sudden, shocking revelation. The heavy oak door finally clicked shut, echoing like a gavel in the now cavernous silence. Their furious whispers and indignant accusations had dissolved into a faint hum, replaced by the profound quiet of a room still vibrating with residual anger. The air, once thick with their presence, felt lighter, yet carried a strange, acrid scent, like burnt sugar. I stood amidst the scattered chairs, the meticulously arranged copies of the will, feeling utterly exposed, as if the very walls were now judging me. The last rays of sunlight, filtering through the library's tall windows, cast long, distorted shadows that seemed to dance with the lingering animosity. A sigh escaped me, a ragged sound I hadn't realized I'd been holding. My muscles, tensed for confrontation, now throbbed with a dull ache. It was a bizarre sensation, this sudden quiet. For so long, I had been an invisible shadow in this family's periphery, and now, in an instant, I was the epicenter of their fury, the target of their collective wrath. The pity they had so readily offered had evaporated, replaced by a raw, unbridled resentment. It felt like shedding an old, uncomfortable skin, even if the new one was currently under siege. Mr. Davies, who had remained silent during the relative's final outburst, approached me, his footsteps soft on the thick Persian rug. His expression was no longer the impassive mask he wore during the reading. Instead, a flicker of something almost sympathetic, almost weary, crossed his face. "Ava," he said, his voice softer than I'd heard it all afternoon. "I must say, that was quite the display. I apologize on behalf of the family." He gestured vaguely at the door, a wry twist to his lips. "No need to apologize, Mr. Davies," I replied, my voice raspy but firm. "I've seen worse. Besides, it was to be expected, wasn't it? They always thought of me as an imposition, a strange, quiet girl Elias took in. This just confirmed their worst fears about me." I looked around the room, the grand furniture, the countless books, the very essence of Elias's quiet, intellectual life, now tinged with the bitterness of his kin. He nodded slowly, adjusting his glasses. "Indeed. However, their claims of undue influence, that is a serious accusation. They will, without a doubt, contest the will. Robert and Martha are quite formidable when they feel wronged, and in this case, they truly believe Elias was manipulated." His words were a cool, logical statement of fact, yet they carried the weight of a coming storm. The fight wasn't over. It had merely begun its next phase. "I know they will," I said, meeting his gaze, a steeliness entering my own. "They see only what they want to see, Mr. Davies. They saw a frail old man, not the sharp, cunning mind Elias had, even in his final days. They couldn't fathom that he might have had reasons beyond their understanding for his decisions." My hand instinctively went to the small, smooth stone I kept in my pocket, a comfort from Elias, a gift given years ago, a tangible link to his unwavering belief in me. "He truly held you in high regard, Ava," Mr. Davies confirmed, his voice a quiet affirmation. "More than any other member of his family, it seemed. He always spoke of your quiet strength, your compassion. He made it very clear, in every conversation we had regarding his estate, that this was his definitive wish, and that he wanted it to be ironclad against any challenges." His words were a balm, a gentle reassurance that sliced through the lingering echoes of Martha's venom. A fragile smile touched my lips. "He was good to me, Mr. Davies. He saw me, truly saw me, when no one else did." The weight of that simple truth, spoken aloud, felt heavier and more profound than the threat of any legal battle. This wasn't just about an inheritance. It was about honoring Elias's final act of faith in me, about upholding his memory against the accusations of those who truly hadn't known him. "Well, you'll have my full support," he stated, his voice professional again, but with an underlying current of personal conviction. "We'll prepare for the challenge. It will be a fight, Ava. A difficult one, but Elias prepared for it. He left very detailed instructions, and frankly, a compelling narrative as to why he made his choices. That will be our strongest defense." The revelation wasn't a secret, but a confirmation of the formidable task ahead, yet also the unexpected strength Elias had woven into his final plans. I took a deep breath, the scent of old paper and wood polish filling my lungs. The quiet of the library, once oppressive, now felt like a sanctuary, a place where Elias's presence still lingered, a guiding hand. "Thank you, Mr. Davies," I replied, my voice steady, imbued with a newfound resolve. "I'm ready for it. Whatever they throw at me, I'm ready." This wasn't just my fight. It was Elias's fight too, a final, defiant act against the expectations of his world. The days that followed the will reading were a blur of phone calls and legal paperwork. Mr. Davies moved with practiced efficiency, but the air around me felt charged, heavy with the unspoken animosity of a family scorned. My phone, usually a quiet companion, now buzzed incessantly with blocked numbers and anonymous messages, harsh accusations whispering through the digital ether. I learned quickly to silence it, finding solace in the quiet hum of Elias's library, now my sanctuary, its walls still echoing with his quiet wisdom. Just as Mr. Davies had predicted, the official challenge arrived less than a week later. A thick envelope, embossed with the name of a high-profile law firm, landed on the polished surface of the antique table in the foyer. It was addressed to me, Ava, but its contents were a direct assault on Elias's memory, and by extension, on my very character. The legal document, cold and formal, alleged undue influence, citing Elias's declining health and my supposed isolation of him from the family. My hand trembled as I read the accusations, each word a venomous dart aimed at the bond Elias and I had shared. Martha and Robert had wasted no time. They painted a picture of a manipulative opportunist, preying on a vulnerable old man. The audacity of it stung, a bitter taste in my mouth, but beneath the hurt, a quiet determination hardened within me. They couldn't understand what Elias and I had. They never would. "They're going to try to paint you as a villain, Ava, Mr. No." Davies explained over a video call, his face a grim pixelated image on my screen. "They'll claim you coerced him, that you preyed on his solitude. This is their standard strategy when a will doesn't go their way." He paused, adjusting his glasses. But Elias anticipated this. He truly did. He left us a robust defense. "What kind of defense, Mr. Davies?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper, a strange mix of dread and anticipation swirling in my stomach. "They seem so convinced they'll win." The very idea of their entitlement infuriated me, fueling a fire I hadn't known I possessed. Their certainty was built on the shaky ground of their own greed. "Elias foresaw their reactions with uncanny accuracy," Mr. Davies replied, a faint, almost reverent note in his voice. "He recorded his thoughts, his reasons. Not just in writing, but, well, let's just say he found a way to speak directly to the court and to the world, even after he was gone. He wanted his truth to be undeniable." The lawyer's words were a lifeline, a hint of the depth of Elias's foresight. That revelation shifted something inside me. Elias had not merely bequeathed his fortune, he had entrusted me with his final, most profound message. He had prepared for this fight, not just for my sake, but to protect his legacy, to tell a story no one else had bothered to hear. It wasn't just about money, it was about reputation, about integrity, about a connection Martha and Robert couldn't possibly comprehend. A new strength surged through me, replacing the anxiety. I wasn't fighting alone. Elias was still with me, his meticulous planning a testament to his trust. I thought of his twinkling eyes, his quiet humor, his ability to see beyond the surface. He had known their hearts, known their reactions, and had countered them with his own profound wisdom. "When can we review this evidence?" I asked, my voice now firm, resolute. The legal battle loomed, but it was no longer just a daunting prospect. It was a stage where Elias's final, most powerful statement would unfold. The quiet strength he had cultivated in me was now put to the ultimate test, fortified by his unwavering belief. "When can we review this evidence?" I asked, my voice now firm, resolute. The legal battle loomed, but it was no longer just a daunting prospect. It was a stage where Elias's final, most powerful statement would unfold. The quiet strength he had cultivated in me was now put to the ultimate test, fortified by his unwavering belief. Mr. Davies leaned back in his office chair, a faint smile touching his lips, something akin to admiration in his eyes. "Very soon, Ava. Elias was a man who understood human nature, particularly the more acquisitive side of it. He anticipated precisely this kind of challenge. His evidence isn't just legal documentation. He recorded a series of video statements over the last 2 years of his life. Private, heartfelt conversations direct to camera, outlining his reasons for every decision in the will and his deep affection for you." My breath hitched. Video statements? A tremor ran through me, a mix of awe and a strange, comforting ache. Elias, ever the quiet observer, had planned this with such intricate care. He wasn't just leaving a will, he was leaving a story, his version of the truth, unadulterated by their bitter interpretations. He filmed himself? I whispered, picturing his kind face, hearing his gentle voice again. Indeed, Mr. Davies confirmed, a low hum of satisfaction in his tone. He wanted his final wishes to be beyond reproach, beyond even the most aggressive legal challenges. He spoke of your bond, your shared interests, how you brought light and quiet companionship into his life when others were absent. He even addressed his estranged family directly, explaining why he felt they had forfeited their claim to his legacy. A knot tightened in my stomach. The thought of Elias, frail yet resolute, speaking his truth into a camera, knowing the storm it would unleash, filled me with a powerful, almost fierce protectiveness. He had been alone in his final preparations, yet he had chosen to expose his deepest thoughts, his disappointments, and his profound trust in me. This wasn't just a legal defense, it was his final act of love, laid bare for the world. And Martha and Robert? I asked, my voice laced with the bitterness I couldn't quite suppress. What about their reaction to this? To him speaking of them like that? The thought of their fury, multiplied by this unexpected revelation, was almost overwhelming. They had underestimated Elias in life. They were about to be truly blindsided by him in death. They will be blindsided, Mr. Davies agreed, his gaze steady. But they've already begun their own campaign, Ava. The anonymous calls you've been receiving, the subtle smears being leaked to local gossip columns, that's them. They're attempting to discredit you before the court even hears Elias's testimony. They're calling you a gold digger, a manipulator. They're trying to turn public opinion against you. My jaw tightened. I'd seen the subtle shifts in the way some people looked at me in the grocery store, the way a few acquaintances had suddenly stopped returning my calls. I'd dismissed it as paranoia, but now it clicked into place. They weren't just fighting in court, they were waging a war on my reputation. They're trying to destroy me, I stated, not a question, but a grim acknowledgement. They're trying to destroy your credibility, yes, Mr. Davies corrected, his voice firm. Because if they can paint you as an untrustworthy opportunist, then Elias's reasons for choosing you become suspect. It's a classic tactic. But Elias foresaw this too. He didn't just record his statements. He laid out a clear timeline of your interactions, the genuine nature of your relationship, providing verifiable details that will refute their claims. A wave of profound gratitude washed over me, a silent testament to the extraordinary man Elias had been. He hadn't just given me wealth. He had given me an impenetrable shield, forged from his love and foresight. The sting of Martha and Robert's accusations still hurt, but now it felt less like a personal attack and more like a desperate, flailing attempt to grasp at something they had never truly earned. The coming battle wasn't just about money, it was about protecting Elias's truth, his integrity, and the sacred bond we had shared. I closed my eyes, picturing Elias's mischievous twinkle, a silent promise of victory. I closed my eyes, picturing Elias's mischievous twinkle, a silent promise of victory. A profound sense of peace, alien and unexpected, settled over me. It wasn't just the relief of knowing Elias had prepared for this fight. It was the overwhelming realization of how deeply he had understood me, how completely he had trusted me. My mind replayed fragments of our time together, long afternoons in this very library, sharing quiet jokes over obscure historical texts, his patient explanations of complex theories, the way he always seemed to know exactly what I needed, even when I didn't. A soft evening light filtered through the tall windows, painting stripes of amber across the Persian rug. The silence in the room was a comfort, a stark contrast to the cacophony of accusations that had filled it just hours before. The air still hummed with the phantom echoes of Martha's shrill protests and Robert's booming indignation, but now those sounds felt distant, muffled by Elias's foresight. They had sought to diminish me, to invalidate my presence, but he, even in his absence, had elevated me. Resting my hand on the cool, polished surface of his mahogany desk, I traced the faint indentations left by countless hours of his work. This desk, the countless books lining the walls, the very essence of this home, spoke of a life lived with intention, curiosity, and a quiet, unyielding integrity. He had built this world, not just for himself, but for truth, and now he had made me its custodian. His trust was the true inheritance, far more valuable than the properties and financial holdings they so desperately craved. The accusations of manipulation, of preying on a vulnerable old man, felt absurd in this space, surrounded by the tangible evidence of Elias's sharp intellect. He had never been frail in mind, only in body. His choices were always deliberate, carefully considered. He had been a man who saw through facades, who valued genuine connection over superficial bloodlines. That's why he had seen me. That's why he had chosen me. He truly believed in you, Ava, Mr. Davies had said, and the words resonated with a deep, comforting truth. It wasn't a sudden, fleeting affection. It was a bond that had grown over years, nurtured in quiet moments, strengthened by shared understandings. While Martha and Robert had focused on appearances, on their perceived birthright, Elias had looked deeper, finding kinship in an unexpected place. I remembered the gentle weight of his hand when he would offer me a book, the slight smile that would play on his lips when I understood a concept he'd been explaining. Those small, intimate moments, unseen by the rest of his family, were the real evidence of our connection. They were the threads woven into the fabric of his final decision, invisible to those who only saw a bottom line. A quiet strength bloomed within my chest, replacing the earlier flutter of anxiety. This battle wasn't just about preserving my claim to Elias's estate. It was about honoring his memory, his vision, and his deeply personal values. It was about proving that his last act was one of profound love and unwavering conviction, not the result of manipulation. I owed it to him to stand firm, to be as resolute as he had been. The thought of Elias's video statements, his voice speaking directly to the court, filled me with a bittersweet longing. It would be like hearing from him one last time, a final conversation, a last lesson. He had given me a voice, a platform, a shield, all from beyond the grave. He had given me the tools to fight, and more importantly, the courage to use them. Stepping closer to a framed photograph on the mantelpiece, a younger Elias, his eyes full of life, a book clutched in his hand, I felt a profound sense of connection. He was still here, in the quiet wisdom of these walls, in the strength he had instilled within me. The coming storm of the legal battle loomed, but I faced it not with dread, but with a quiet, fierce determination, fortified by the invisible hand of my extraordinary uncle. I would carry his truth forward. The quiet hum of the library became a symphony of peace, the scent of old paper and Elias's faint, lingering cologne, a comforting embrace. I remained amidst the tall shelves, bathed in the soft amber glow of the setting sun, the world outside with its frenzied accusations feeling impossibly distant. The battle, I knew, was yet to come, but here, in the heart of Elias's sanctuary, his foresight had already built an unbreachable wall around me. Their fury was a storm on the horizon, but I stood on solid ground, anchored by a love they could never comprehend. My fingers traced the spine of an antique book, its leather worn smooth by countless readings. Each object in this room whispered tales of Elias, of his quiet intellect, his profound empathy, and his subtle, powerful rebellion against the superficiality of his world. He hadn't just left me an estate. He had left me a testament to a life lived on one's own terms, a blueprint for courage in the face of judgment. The real inheritance wasn't measured in dollars, but in the unwavering belief he had placed in me, an invisible treasure more precious than gold. A faint smile touched my lips, remembering how he'd often sit by the tall window, lost in thought, his gaze drifting over the sprawling gardens. I could almost hear his gentle voice, a murmur against the quietude, recounting some obscure historical anecdote or offering a surprisingly simple solution to a complex problem. He hadn't been just an uncle. He had been a mentor, a confidant, a lighthouse guiding me through the tumultuous waters of my own life. The accusations of manipulation, of preying on a vulnerable old man, now felt not just absurd, but utterly irrelevant. How could they, with their transactional understanding of relationships, ever grasp the profound, unspoken language Elias and I shared? Their greed had blinded them to the true nature of his spirit, to the depth of his discernment. He had seen through their performance, their feigned affections, and chosen instead the quiet, genuine connection we had forged. I walked to the vast oak desk, running my hand over its cool, polished surface. Here he had spent countless hours, meticulously planning not only his will, but also his final defiant stand. He had anticipated their every move, not out of malice, but from a profound understanding of human nature's darker facets. He had prepared for this moment, not just for me, but to protect his own truth, to ensure his legacy was defined by his intentions, not their interpretations. The sun dipped lower, casting long, dramatic shadows across the Persian rug, transforming the library into a kaleidoscope of muted gold and deep crimson. In this fading light, Elias's presence felt less like a memory and more like a quiet breath beside me. He hadn't truly left. He had simply transmuted, his essence now woven into the very fabric of my being, in the steel in my spine, the calm in my heart, the unwavering resolve that pulsed through my veins. The thought of his video statements, his voice speaking directly to the world, would be a bittersweet echo. It was his final conversation, a last lesson, a confirmation of the trust he'd placed in me. He had given me a voice, a platform, a shield, all from beyond the grave. He had given me the tools to fight, and more importantly, the courage to use them, to defend not just an estate, but a sacred bond. Looking out into the twilight, the first stars beginning to prick the indigo canvas of the sky, I knew the path ahead would be fraught with challenges. Martha and Robert would unleash their full wrath. But their bitterness was their burden, not mine. My burden was a legacy of love, a testament to being seen, truly seen, by an extraordinary soul. The silence that enveloped me was no longer empty, but resonant, filled with the echo of Elias's wisdom. Some lives are measured by what they accumulate, others by what they leave behind. Elias had left behind more than wealth. He had left a profound lesson in integrity, in the power of genuine connection, and in the quiet strength of those who choose to live authentically. His whispered truth was now my own, a light against the encroaching darkness.